Howard Wilson, Siemens. Thank you for bringing me to your favourite bar, Jury's Inn Bar in Christchurch in Dublin.
Yes. It's located in a part of town with a lot of history. The reason I chose this, is it my favorite bar? Maybe not necessarily, but it's a location that it's a bar I spent probably my most amount of time in. When I was studying in Kevin Street, my electrical degree, I spent on off 3 years working in this establishment. Enjoyed every minute of it. So I spent a lot of hours in there. I used to work a Friday night, Saturday night, early shift Sunday. So that was 3 shifts, paid for 4 because it was double on a Sunday. And you got there were a lot of English visitors and a lot of American visitors. So you got a lot of tips. You were fed for the weekend, and there was a barista on the end of the bar. So you were serving sometimes coffee and donuts and sweet things. And when the shift was over and you needed to clean up anything that hadn't been sold that day, you brought home. So on a Monday morning for an electrical lab in Kevin Street, I was everybody's best friend.
And you didn't know why. Donuts will always get it. Homer Simpson was right.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Isn't it really interesting that you picked this bar, because it's obviously part of your evolution as a person, and it's connected with your university days. Because often, sort of, when we go to university and that, we can go into this theoretical bubble. Whereas I'm sure every Friday night you saw real humanity in that bar, and you saw the real peaks, troughs, behaviors of people, and probably standing to you right now in your work, I guess.
Yeah, it's it's a city center location. Yeah, you're in the middle of town. It's a busy area. So you gotta bring your A game. It wasn't a location you came to on a Friday evening, starting a 3-day busy weekend, tired or hungover, God forbid, or something along those lines. So
hospitality is tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I started my hospitality working right back when I was 15. So I've worked in many bars and hotels right back in Virginia and Cavan, where I'm from. So and that carried on to when I was near finished college. So yeah.
Okay, and because there's no doubt that the best way to get a 15, 16-year-old used to the trials and tribulations of and the differences of people is to throw them into a lounge bar job in a pub, and they get to see all sorts, don't they?
Yeah, I agree. And I've got young kids, and you're already considering those kind of possibly those kind of establishments, maybe more hotel, restaurant kind of thing, rather than bar or late night for many reasons. But for me, the hard work started many years before that on a family dairy farm. So, but from a customer service, from a communication point of view, being customer front and center, there are great locations for that. Yeah.
Well, you certainly weren't learning that down in Kevin Street. It was all slide rules and numbers.
Yeah. It was all ones and zeros down there.
Ones and zeros. Ones and zeros. So listen, we're sitting there, the two of us, on that little stool there, and your replacement, let's say, is after serving us a couple of pints or coffee or whatever's to go, and the door opens, dead or alive. Who is it that you'd love to say, come on over and we'll have a chat?
Yeah. I probably, so recently I visited, I don't know whether you've ever been. Oh, last year I seen you at the National Ploughing Championships, Garry, weren't you? Yeah.
I was, and my memory is rain. But yes.
Right. Okay, and it was a poor year for it weather-wise, unfortunately. But when the weather's good, it's a great event. I think it's the largest outdoor agricultural event in Europe, the National Clown Championship. But there is a more regional version of it called Balmoral Show, if you've ever been just outside of Belfast. And so I've recently been at that. So relating back to that, if Harry Ferguson came in and sat down beside me, or Joseph Cyril Bamford, or David Brown, or some of these kind of guys, I'd love to have a conversation with them. Or then maybe, I don't know, maybe something. I watch a bit of the snooker. It's that's been on the TV recently. So maybe Ronnie O'Sullivan, or I follow a bit of Formula One. So maybe Eddie Jordan, yeah, wouldn't that be fun? Or Adrian Newey, or some of those kind of guys.
You're going to have to rent your own bar. Actually, you're going to have a closed bar with so many. But going back, I'd really be interested, because I'm only guessing here.
Yeah.
Massey Ferguson, was that the Ferguson of who you mentioned there earlier?
Yeah, so Massey Harris was the Massey side of it, and Harry Ferguson was the Ferguson side of it. So, and then it eventually became Massey Ferguson. Yeah. So,
and what I learned last year, and I've heard in dispatch, I live reasonably close. I know that they were formative in tractor development.
Yeah, so I mean, Harry Ferguson started with he was the first British and Irish man to fly his own plane back in the early 1900s. Before he got into the agricultural side of engineering, but he's probably most familiar for people think of the Ferguson tractor and agriculture in general, but it's the Ferguson system. The fact that what he really invented was something that's called the Ferguson system. What he invented was the ability to be able to carry implements behind a tractor rather than drag them behind a tractor. And that meant that you needed smaller tractors and less horsepower to do similar things that were already been done with earlier versions of tractors. So so, for example, before Harry Ferguson invented the Ferguson system, people mounted a tractor by the rear. Nobody got onto a tractor in front of the back wheel until he invented the TE 20 or something along those lines. Yeah.
What I'm really interested there is that change is constant in every sector. And unless, like you're after teaching me more now than I've ever known about tractors and the evolution, but the consistency of change is that he probably, like a lot of people in the world that we live in, and digitalization and transformation, think that won't work. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, he was nicknamed the Mad Mechanic. He was, there's other stories about, how he did the deal with Massey Harris. So where they combined both companies then, and it became Massey Ferguson. So they were, he was at, let's use round figures here. He wanted 12 million, and Massey Harris was willing to pay 10 million. And he was trying to meet in the middle, and they flipped the coin for £1 million or dollars or whatever it was at the time, and he lost. But maybe some of the reasons why he was called the Mad Mechanic, but he was certainly ahead of his time and out there. And the deal he did with Henry Ford in production was a handshake, Gary. It's a bit like the agreement you have with the members in Host in Ireland. There's no contract. It was a handshake, and both parties got what they wanted to and needed to at the time. Yeah.
But that's the point, that obviously the former point that you make regarding sort of we think of, because they get the profile, the Steve Jobs of this world and the IBM people of this world and all the rest of it, about change makers and stuff, but there's so many similar types of people in each sector, through agriculture, through all
Yeah.
those sectors. And when you listen to the stories, somebody has to question the norm and say, there must be a better way, or maybe there's a better way, or maybe I should go. And they're often called mad. But isn't that, Howard, the thing between madness and brilliance is a usually the bit of luck.
Yeah, it can be a fine line. You know, it can be people whose brains work differently. Yeah, and you know they look at things, you know, in a totally different way than, you know, the normal person might look at things. So I have friends who are varied, and you know, what's this thing where you are it's better to have variation, and then you are what's the word? You're a mix of all of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and we talk about that regularly in every sector that we talk to. Is you if you mix with the same, you just become an echo chamber. You just hear what you said last week back at you, and you don't actually have variation and variety. So you have that room of dignitaries that you've invited. They're all there, all of them.
Yeah,
and
great.
you're gonna really blow them away profoundly with a quote. Have you got one that you like to live by?
So some of those guys I mentioned, yeah, some of the inventors had some great quotes. Can I mention a couple of words? I have them written down, Gary. So for example, Joseph Cyril Bamford. Do you know who that is? Joseph Cyril Bamford, JCB.
Okay,
Yeah,
now I do.
right. Yeah. So he said, "Simplicate, don't complicate." Yeah. Okay. And Harry Ferguson was quoted one time as saying he described his inventions as a new wealth to enrich the world. And so he was talking about, with his designs, the ability for everybody to create food, enough food for the world's population. So there's some nice ones there, but the one I really like is, and I have it from you, but you have it from someone else. Yeah. A bit of Arnie. I love be useful. I really like that one. I heard it from you a couple of years ago, and I reference it, and I think of it quite often, because if I'm going to see a customer, or I'm trying to gain a new customer, or we're doing business with a customer that's maybe become dormant or stagnant, if you break it all down to and ask the question of the person you're in front of, how can I be more helpful? What can I do for you? I really like be helpful from Arnie.
I'm with you on that. As I said, I watched that whole Netflix thing, and at the end of it, he just said, "How can at 80, whatever? How can I be useful?"
Yeah.
And it's a great way to live by. But going back to and we'll probably finish up with this, is the simplicity of those words you've used. I often think that there's a lot to be learned from something that people genuinely can remember, rather than huge mission statements. You know, what was the thing? What was the
Simplicate, don't complicate.
Okay, look, every engineer in the world should look at that. We know you're bright. We know you've got the answers, but can you communicate that simply to the person who has the problem?
Yeah.
You know, and what's the second one?
So the second one was from Harry Ferguson, yeah, and it was where he described his inventions as a new wealth to enrich the world.
And that's 100 years ago, is it?
Yeah, well, it's probably 1950s, probably. Yeah, okay. 1950s. Yeah.
So 70, 80 years. Both references could be from 2024.
Sure.
Just the beauty of it. The beauty of these things is they're timeless, because the challenges that you have in your digitalization, decarbonization and stuff, you know, it's so complex. It's huge. Simplify it. Can we all understand what the problem is? Because if we can't all understand what the problem is, we're probably not going to arrive at a solution together. And so many of the things are timeless like that. Listen, I've really enjoyed this because I've learned about farming.
Yeah.
I've learned about hospitality. I've learned so many fundamental skills that are way away from the degree that you got in Kevin Street that you use daily. The reference points. You very rarely in a social conversation ever reference. Wait till I tell you a great theorem that I learned in Kevin Street. So to have those real personalization things like with Ferguson, because well, I'm a townie man. I know nothing about JCBs. And it's really interesting, isn't it? To just didn't you take for granted like a JCB? There wasn't always a JCB. There wasn't always a tractor as you described.
Yeah.
So it's been really interesting. It's been very informative and good old Arnie, you know.
Good. Yeah.
And be useful. And I think this was very useful. Thank you so much, Howard. It's been fun.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for the chat. See you soon, guys.